Hello, everyone. Welcome to Cinema Mancuso, and this is Notes on the News. I'm Peter Mancuso, and this is the show where I break down the biggest stories in film, media, entertainment, and give you my thoughts. If you joined us live, super happy to have you. If at any point you have any questions or comments about any of the topics I'm going to be covering, feel free to drop them in the live chat. I'll do my best to keep an eye on it, see if we can kind of get a conversation started. We stream this show every Tuesday, 6 p.m. Eastern Time, so I'm glad you were able to find us. And if you haven't already, please like this live stream. It really, really helps with people finding the channel and, with the engagement and algorithm and all of that. So if you have kind of stumbled upon this channel and this video, why don't you subscribe? It really would be great. It would make me feel all warm and fuzzy inside and help kind of grow this community. If you're watching this after the fact, still super happy to have you. By the time you're watching this, there should be time codes down in the description so you can kind of jump around at your leisure. Like I said, we stream this every Tuesday at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. And please do not forget, like I said, to like this and subscribe. Today's going to be a little bit different. There wasn't a lot of news that happened in the past week or so, so what I've decided to do is this is going to be a shorter episode this week. I know you're all so disappointed, so we're just going to do the box office, and we're going to do one story. And at the end, if we have anyone actually watching this live, we're going to do like a little Ask Me Anything. We'll try for maybe 5 minutes, see if anyone has any actual questions for me, just about any topic that they're curious to get my take on. But if not, then we'll just wrap up, early. So if you have any questions that are random, that have nothing to do with what we're going to talk about, otherwise, feel free to drop them in. But anyway, why don't we kind of get started here? Okay, let's take a look at the box office from this past week. Total domestic box office was around 331 million, which is, an 85% jump. Of course, this is because it was the Christmas week, so a lot of people had the week off. This is the period where most of the movies are that are released the week of Christmas, they release on Christmas Day. So this year, it was a Wednesday. So we had a lot of films have a longer opening than other films might, right? So when you look at the new films opening this week, the projections are kind of like, take them or leave them. Take them with a grain of salt, I guess would be the better expression, because, I don't make these predictions on my own. I'm pulling from different sources, because the sources that I'm pulling from, they have access to the data necessary to make good, accurate predictions. I don't have access to such data. So, but the problem, though, is that a lot of the projections I found for these different movies didn't always specify if it was for Friday to Sunday or if it was for Wednesday, from Christmas Day onward. So the projections might be a little bit off for some of these, but in any case, it makes sense that this was an 85% jump because there was just more people had more time to go to the movies, right? So the biggest new movie was Nosferatu, right? So this is Robert Eggers' new film. The director of The Witch, Lighthouse, The Northman. This opened at number 3, which, makes sense. Ideally, if your film is new, you want it to be top number 1. But considering what it was going up against, this is a very serviceable opening at around almost $41 million. So these projections, again, might be off depending on if it's for 3 days or 5 days. I had projected around 12 to 27 million with a 19 million target. So assuming those projections were accurate, this well exceeded those projections, right? It's been getting rave reviews. I'm scheduled to go see it this week on Thursday, so the day after New Year's, the 2nd of January. I've heard really, really great things, and again, I really like Robert Eggers' work, and it's good to see it get somewhat rewarded, again, on an indie scale, right? Because, again, it's still not profitable, necessarily, so if you look at the worldwide total, it's only around 44 million, but it was made for about 50 million. Now, I imagine that this is going to have some good legs and sustain itself, since it's kind of I don't know if it's going to be an awards movie necessarily. Maybe it will turn out to be almost kind of like a Poor Things situation, right, from last year, where a more kind of, obviously this isn't quirky, it's like a horror movie, but it's giving me similar vibes, not aesthetically, not in terms of the content, but just something about it when it comes to the awards conversation. But for a budget of $50 million, this is still in the red. So, it still has a bit of a way to make back its money. But again, I think with the critical acclaim and then presumably the awards buzz that follows, it will, kind of hold a little bit, week to week. Especially as we move into January, where kids will be back in school. There'll be more money to go around, and it's something a little more something to sink your teeth into, right? Also opening this week was A Complete Unknown. It couldn't even squeak into the top 5. So at number 6, A Complete Unknown made about $23 million, which kind of fell right into those projections that I had made, around 11 to 27 with an 18 million target. So this exceeded the target. It's still within the range by that upper bound of 27, but I'm surprised that this didn't do better. Just because, I actually went to go see the movie. The jury's out if I'll be able to write a review about it, just because I've been so busy, and it's been like almost a week since I saw it. But it got decent reviews. I thought it was good. Chalamet is great in it, and it's a music biopic. And general audiences love music biopics, right? So I'm surprised this didn't do as well as didn't do better. But again, maybe like Nosferatu, it's gonna have some really good staying power. Again, especially as we move into award season. I could see Chalamet getting nominated for Best Actor for this role, as opposed to his role in Dune Part 2, which would be a shame because he's so much better in Dune Part 2. But I think this is going to kind of keep holding. And it looks like it hasn't even opened worldwide yet. Though I wonder I'm sure it will open worldwide, but I wonder how well it'll do, because music is universal, but not all music is universal, right? Because Bob Dylan's, I think, main draw is the lyricism in that American, and I'm not calling it Americana, because that's a very specific genre qualification. Bob Dylan's not Americana, but more so his music is quintessentially American, right? It is very much based in the folk music of the 20th century. And not only that, his lyrics are so poetic or complex, or whatever adjective you want to use, but that doesn't always translate, right? Because it's very poetic within the realm of English. So I wonder if people would really have an appetite for a movie like this overseas. Obviously maybe in England, right? In the English-speaking world, but, it's not going to do the kind of numbers that our top 2 movies this past week are able to do worldwide, because they're way more culturally universal or accessible, right? In our big budget spectacles that aren't super bogged down by the fact that by the language, right? Also opening this week, we had Baby Girl, right? The kind of psychosexual thriller with Nicole Kidman, who is like a girl boss CEO starting a scandalous affair with like an intern at her company. This is another one that is not going to did not open huge. It did fall within the projections, right? So it did meet my target of 6 million. It's at 7.2 now. But again, this is one that I think is hopeful for awards, or rather they are hopeful about it. I don't see this transcending the awards season, but its positioning on opening Christmas Day very much feels like we're just going to try to squeak it in so it qualifies for like the Academy Awards, and hopefully maybe someone will get like a supporting actor nom, or Nicole Kidman will get nominated for Best Actress or something, right? So again, it didn't open huge. Also has not opened worldwide. And again, also in the red. So you're seeing all these new movies are in the red. At a what is it? The ROI is not good. Same with The Complete Unknown. Both of them are like 60 plus, negative 60 plus, or I guess on the negatives it'd be minus, right? But those are pretty big losses right now, right? So it's gonna be important for these movies to try their best to maintain momentum, hopefully build word of mouth. I think general audiences will like A Complete Unknown and have liked it and have been telling people about it. Nosferatu especially is going to get a lot of buzz, but I'm not sure what the general audience word of mouth is going to be like. Baby Girl, I feel like fits neither. Baby Girl is like too idiosyncratic for general audiences, but maybe a little too sensationalized for more sophisticated audiences. So I've yet to see it. Hopefully I'm able to catch it this in the next couple of weeks. But it is positioned well to do well, but it's the jury's still out. Of the 3 new films I've talked about, it's the one with the least chance of being able to make back its budget. Though the reason why I just paused is because I'm like, well, maybe the next one I'm about to mention, which is The Fire Inside at number 10. This is like the sports biopic movie. Also very much in the red. So if you look at the ROI, it's also like negative 60 plus, right? But again, the projections were modest and it met the projections. It just barely passed my target of 4 million at 4.3-ish. Again, also has not opened worldwide, but if you notice, it has a much smaller budget. So at only 12 million. So this could, of all of the 3, this one is the one that I always point out every week of the films that really just feel like they were meant for direct to streaming, but they're like, okay, let's just release it in theaters. Let's make as much money as we can because we were already going to release it just onto streaming anyway. So let's just see how much money we can make. So, this could do okay the next couple of weeks. Again, it's all about finding your niche. And right now, there's really no other film like it. And I think, interestingly about this top 10 is it's a very diverse bunch, right? They all more or less fill different niches. There are a few, and we'll talk about the ones in particular, that do kind of overlap in terms of their audience focus. But usually it's 2 over here overlapping, and then 2 over here overlapping. Like you have a lot of choice here as the consumer. And let's kind of use that as a good segue, if you will, to talking about this number 1. So Mufasa, the Lion King. So this opened last week. And this and Sonic the Hedgehog 3 have switched places. So last week, Sonic opened bigger than Mufasa, but Mufasa now has kind of flipped the script here. So in its second week, it brought in a little under 78 million, which was a 120% jump, right? So that 85% jump for the entire week, owes a lot to Mufasa here. And I think why this has happened is because Mufasa is way more accessible. Sonic the Hedgehog 3 is, and this is very reductive, and this is not true in a real human sense, but just from like a marketing perspective. Sonic is for young boys, right? Whereas Mufasa can kind of be like for the whole family. Not to say that Sonic 3 doesn't have elements that make it appealing for the entire family, but Mufasa, there's a lot less convincing that probably needs to happen, right? It's a big budget, it's lions, and there's fighting, so that'll be good for the boys. There's also a romance, and there's songs, so that'll be good for the girls. And again, of course, this is very reductive because, of course, I was the kind of boy where I would have preferred the singing and the romance as a kid versus the fighting necessarily, right? So this is not, I'm not trying to be reductive and gender this kind of stuff, but from a marketing perspective, Mufasa, for general audiences, Mufasa seems to be, earning its name of Mufasa the Lion King, right? This brings its domestic total to about 113 million. So it's actually already, just in 2 weeks, already has made a decent amount of money, or rather has had a decent amount of legs. I mean, it's already in that green zone just after 2 weeks. And worldwide, it's made 327 million. Again, off of a $200 million budget, so it's still, it's past that initial threshold, but ideally you want to double that budget, right? But that's very impressive for a movie that the critical consensus seems to be that it's more or less mediocre. I saw it. I thought it was a little bit better than critics were giving it credit for. I thought it was a net positive, but it was only okay. Like, I don't know if I'll ever watch it again. But there there was quite a lot of bright spots of like, oh, that's interesting. Oh, that could be cool. Oh, if that had been done this way, that would have been even better. So maybe audiences, now that you have families off for Christmas, they were like, let's go see something that'll be fun for the whole family. Though, again, Sonic 3 did not fall that much short, right? So at second place, it opened, or excuse me, not opened, but this week it brought in about 76.5 million. Only a 27% jump from last week. Again, is starting to have some decent legs already, but not as good as Mufasa. And notably, if you look here, the difference. So Sonic 3 is made more domestically, but less worldwide. So what that's telling me is that international audiences find Mufasa more appealing because, again, it's like a little more universal, where Sonic 3, despite being based off of a Japanese video game, the movie feels very American. Whereas Mufasa feels a little more transcendent, if you will. And that word feels a little, it's not transcendent maybe in the typical use of the word, but rather it transcends those national cultural barriers, right? And notably, it was made for way less than Mufasa, right? It was made for 122 million. So the percent return is better. Despite having made less worldwide than Mufasa, it actually is closer to making back its money. And ultimately, that's the name of the game. Higher risk, higher reward. In this case, Sonic 3 took the lesser risk, and so far that's paying off for them. Still in the top 5, we have Wicked dropping from a 3rd to 4th place. Now in its 6th week, this has had very, very strong performance. So it brought in just a little under 40 million for the week, a 57% jump. This thing is a powerhouse, and it deserves to be a powerhouse. It's brought in about 425 million domestically, and worldwide it's brought in about 635 million off of just a $150 million budget. So it's already well within the green zone. It's already making back its money. This is one of the best films of the year, if not the best film of the year, in my humble opinion. And it just couldn't happen to a better film. And it's good for the genre of movie musicals. Maybe not good in the long term, because what this is gonna mean, or I don't know if it would be short term or long term, but I'm sure this will inspire. Because again, if I could like tape one lesson on like a wall of lessons, right? Like maybe if I one day have more money, I'll create like a nice background instead of just like my apartment. The big thing will be Hollywood always learns the wrong lessons from success and failure. So the lesson is going to be more musicals, especially musicals that are already popular. And they're just going to churn out a bunch, and they're not going to be very good, and it's going to ruin the genre again. This happens every decade, every 15, 20 years. A really, really great movie musical gets critical acclaim and brings in a shit ton of money at the box office, and then inspires a bunch of, not even imitators stylistically, but just imitators of, let's just have a movie musical made. They're underwhelming. It kind of kills the genre. And then the whole thing starts up again 10, 15 years later. So we're probably seeing that here. So who knows, what the effect is, but that's my guess, is that we're just gonna get a shit ton of shitty movie musicals. And again, I think all of this to say is that I'm just happy that it's above Moana 2. So Moana 2, also still in the top 5, dropping from 4th to 5th place. It's 5 weeks now. Again, only a little bit less than Wicked this week, around 36 million. Bigger jump, though, 66%. And what's interesting about this, it's kind of like the Mufasa situation, where this has made less domestically, but it's made more worldwide. Again, I think just because it's a little more accessible. I think globally, if you want to make a shit ton of money globally, it needs to be a big visual effects spectacle or an animated film. Because those are just going to work way better overseas. Because even if some of the cultural, signifiers are lost in translation, you still get the spectacle of seeing the images, right? This one has not had the same legs, if you will, as Wicked has. But to be fair, it has been out for one less week. But again, worldwide, it's making more money. And they both had about the same budget. So this is also very, very profitable, and it's shaping up to, I think, be in the top 5 domestic films of the year. Maybe even like the 3rd, if I'm not mistaken. And then also still continuing here, for its 6th week, it opened the same weekend as Wicked, is Gladiator 2. It dropped out of the top 5 from 5th to 7th place. Brought just a little over $9 million. A very small jump. But decent legs, right? So this is a movie that was a little bit of a I don't want to call it disappointment financially, but it felt like there was this really big buildup with the marketing campaign, and then it just kind of like, right? So considering that, it's been holding out pretty well, right? So it opened around 55 million domestically, and it's made about 163 million. So 2/3 of the box office have been made after the opening, which is pretty good. And then worldwide, it's made about 435 million, right? But again, the issue here is that it costs so much money for Paul Mescal and Pedro Pascal and Denzel Washington and Joseph Quinn and all these people. So it's luckily made has reached the budget. It just needs to double the budget now. So we're so close, but I'm not sure if it's going to make it. My gut is telling me no, because it's at 89% return right now. And last week it was at 76. So maybe, unless it has a couple more markets to open in, I'm not sure. But again, this one will end up being a decent profit down the road with rentals and streaming and all of that good stuff. So this is the last full week of the year. And I'm actually planning, knock on wood, to do a additional live stream this week. I think I'm going to do it on Saturday, or maybe Friday night, but probably Saturday afternoon, where I'm going to talk about the entire box office of 2024, talk about like the top movies, the top studios, and kind of try to evaluate what did those numbers, what story do those numbers tell us. But that being said, yesterday and today are still part of 2024. There's still money to be made. But for all intents and purposes, this is the last real week of 2024. Okay, let me just grab a quick drink here. Okay. Let's talk about story number 1, and the only story this evening. If you're joining us late, we're doing a shorter show this week, because nothing really happened this past week. So we're just going to do one story, and then we're going to maybe do like an Ask Me Anything. So if there's anyone that's actually watching this live, feel free to ask me any questions about literally anything. It's not called Ask Me Some Things. It's Ask Me Anything. Let's talk about story number 1 here. So Christopher Nolan's next film, which we've known about for some time now, but we didn't know what it was going to be about. It's been revealed that it's going to be an adaptation of the Odyssey. Of course, the famous, iconic, seminal, influential, insert adjectives here, epic poem from ancient Greece. It's going to have a star-studded cast. We already knew about this cast, but now it starts to get your mind turning, thinking about, well, who's everyone going to play? So the cast is including, but certainly not limited to, Matt Damon, who presumably is going to be playing Odysseus. I don't know. Matt Damon, Tom Holland, Anne Hathaway, Zendaya, Robert Pattinson, Lupita Nyong'o, and Charlize Theron. That's an insane cast. That is like almost everybody on that list is incredible, and the people who aren't incredible are still really, really good. And it's interesting that this is what the movie's going to be about, because Deadline notes that, there was plenty of rumors floating around about what this was going to be about. Some people said it was going to be like a vampire period piece. Some others thought it was going to be about helicopter pilots. And it turns out all those rumors were completely wrong. They were not even close to what it ended up being announced as. And here's like an official statement from Universal, which of course is going to be distributing the film following their success with Nolan and Oppenheimer. They said, quote, Christopher Nolan's next film, The Odyssey. So I guess it's just called The Odyssey. It's not going to have a different name, which is kind of cool. Christopher Nolan's next film, The Odyssey, is a mythic action epic shot across the world using brand new IMAX film technology. The film brings Homer's foundational saga to IMAX film screens for the first time and opens in theaters everywhere on July 17th, 2026. end quote. So we still have a long ways to go, about 18 months, but they are expected to be starting production next year. So if you don't know anything about the Odyssey, and there could very well be a lot of you that don't know anything about the Odyssey, and that's kind of been part of the discourse, which I'll get to. The Odyssey, again, like I said, was an ancient epic poem. And again, by poem, we're not talking about like roses are red, violets are blue. When we're talking about ancient epic poems, it was kind of the medium du jour, right? It was the way to communicate mythology and story. They were narrative poems, right? Historians think that it was written around the 8th century BC. It's one of the oldest pieces of literature that's still widely read and studied, beyond just like historical curiosity. It's quite possible, it seems like the jury's still out on this, it's quite possible that it's not like Homer, who's the guy who wrote it, not Homer Simpson. Homer is like this famous ancient Greek writer. There's debate about if he wrote the whole thing, like he conceived of the entire thing, or if it was just the writing down of a long-standing oral tradition, right? Because if you think about it, at this time, most people weren't literate. Few could read, let alone write. So it's very possible that this was Homer transcribing and maybe adding some details or literary devices here and there, but the arc of the story is something that already existed. It's not like Homer. It's not like George Lucas in Star Wars, where he like sat down and created this thing. But nevertheless, it is a foundational text, at least for Western literature, right? And essentially, the Odyssey, it's essentially a sequel to the Iliad, which is another epic poem by Homer. The Iliad covers the Trojan War. So the Odyssey focuses on Odysseus, hence the name, who fights in the Trojan War. The Odyssey is all about him trying to get home after the war and all these kind of mishaps. And, it features several iconic kind of episodes that, even if you don't know much about the Odyssey, that these have kind of permeated popular culture. So, like fighting the Cyclops, right? Like the one-eyed monster. Encountering the sirens, right? Like the beautiful women in the sea who sing and they guide, ships to rocks and then they die, right? The less known but still somewhat has permeated is like the contest of the bow, right? So iconically, at the end he shows up and his wife Penelope, there's a bunch of people pretending to be her husband. It's been like 10 years, spoiler alert. It's been like 10 years, so Odysseus kind of looks different, so she's not sure who's actually Odysseus, so she basically sets up a bunch of axes that have a bunch of like holes in the axes. I guess axes used to kind of have like these big spaces, gaps, and she was like, whoever can shoot an arrow through them all is Odysseus, and he's the only one who's able to do it, right? So that's like one that people don't necessarily know explicitly, but I feel like that is like a thing that has permeated kind of stories and mythology. And those are just a few examples of just how incredibly important and influential the Odyssey is, right? It's important for a number of reasons. So number one, it's a window into ancient Greek culture, right? We kind of through both what happens in the story, but also what Homer decides to focus on, gives us an insight into what was important for Homer and the ancient Greeks, right? Perhaps most importantly, it's influential because of the way it kind of it probably didn't create, but it's the oldest text that we have of this, presumably, of the archetypal hero's journey, right? The Joseph Campbell, I mentioned George Lucas in Star Wars, right? There's like a line of influence between the Odyssey and Star Wars or something, right? And it covers universal themes and ideas, things that are not just particular to ancient Greece, but ideas about, the struggle and the desire to return home and a lot of interesting concepts. Admittedly, I've not read it, right? So this is like the big discourse that's kind of happening about this. There's been like, maybe this is small d discourse on like Twitter and things like that, but people are complaining that other people don't know much, if anything, about the source material, about the Odyssey. And then people getting mad at those people saying, well, you're being elitist. Not everyone has had the education that you maybe have had, so we don't necessarily know about it. So I guess the question is it elite to know about the Odyssey, right? So again, like, I never read it for school. I'm more familiar with the Trojan War, not even the Iliad, but like summaries of the Iliad that we would read like in middle school. Like I think I have it on my shelf, like almost like a kid's version of the Iliad. But again, it is foundational. So it's like, even if you don't know about the Odyssey, you feel its effects, right? So I'm kind of agnostic about the whole debate. I think, if nothing else, if Oppenheimer got people excited about history and Oppenheimer and the Manhattan Project, maybe this will inspire people to read the Odyssey, or it'll kind of be like it'll be like the gateway into learning more about this, not only the Odyssey, but texts like it and literary studies in general, right? But speaking of Oppenheimer, this is directly because of Oppenheimer, right? This is Nolan's blank check. If you ever heard that phrase, this is when in Hollywood someone is so successful that basically a studio just basically says, do whatever you want to do. Here's a blank check, right? He's always been a critical and commercial powerhouse to varying degree, but even like even the floor is still pretty high. But Oppenheimer took the cake, right? That was what sealed the deal. Commercially, it made almost $1 billion with a B, $1 billion at the global box office off of just $100 million budget. So that's a pretty good ROI if you're Universal. It wasn't just a financial powerhouse. It was nominated for 13 Academy Awards, and won 7 of them, which were Best Original Score, Best Film Editing, Best Cinematography, Best Supporting Actor for Robert Downey Jr., Best Actor for Cillian Murphy, Best Director for Christopher Nolan, and then Best Picture, right? So it really sweeped, and that's just the Academy Awards. I mean, if you look at every major awards ceremony or program, whatever you want to call it, Oppenheimer really just swept 2023, right? And Christopher Nolan is aware of this success and in this blank check, and he was like, I'm gonna capitalize on this. So there was a recent interview with Emma Thomas, who's his wife and producing partner, and she said, quote, I would say it's very exciting. This is the moment where the possibilities are sort of limitless. We haven't started thinking practicalities or anything. Oppenheimer was so absurdly successful, and we feel like we have an opportunity, end quote. 100%, right? Like they have, the chance to maybe make something that Christopher Nolan really feels like our generation's, like, David Lean almost, right? Like these huge epics that, are people, general audiences like them, but there's so much to sink your teeth into. If you're more trained in the language of film or literary or, whatever your discipline might be. So I think Nolan's going to be remembered as this kind of old style Hollywood director of, very, very commercially viable, but makes work that stands the test of time. So I think this film's going to be fantastic. Again, this is like a new kind of film for Nolan. He's never made anything related to like fantasy or mythology. So unless he makes like a gritty, realistic version of the Odyssey, which I doubt, he's going to have to kind of, the most maybe we got was Batman, right? Because just by nature, he did it as realistically as you could, but Batman is still, in a sense, almost like a Greek hero. So maybe that's kind of like the dress rehearsal for this. But this is kind of him stepping out of his comfort zone. But if the material itself is out of his comfort zone, the filmmaking part is not, right? So it's the perfect application of Nolan's style. His characters are criticized for being a little flat anyways. So, one man's flat is another man's archetypal, right? So maybe this will actually, his kind of style of writing will actually fit really well with like a story related to Greek mythology. And then on top of just the epic IMAX filmmaking that we're going to see. Christopher Nolan is really the one who made IMAX filmmaking mainstream. Because before that, it was really just for like nature documentaries. And he was the one who really saw this as, a new way to enhance the language of film. And he's the one who still does it the best because he goes out there with the actual IMAX 70mm film stock, shoots on IMAX, and then if you can go to one of the giant screens in the country or on the globe, that's able to project the IMAX 70mm. It's unlike anything you've ever seen. Luckily, there's one in New York, and then also there's one in Providence, Rhode Island, where I'm from, Rhode Island. So I've been very spoiled. I'm able to go see these in like the best way possible. So I think getting to kind of have that kind of filmmaking, that palette, or that canvas, if you will, and doing the Odyssey, I think that's such a perfect blend of Nolan's strength. So I'm so excited for this, and I wish it was coming out sooner. But I said the thing about Oppenheimer, but it was certainly worth the wait. Okay, let me grab a quick drink here. So again, this is only one story tonight. There was not a lot of news that happened this past week, so I'm gonna just leave this going for maybe 3 or 5 minutes. I'm gonna drink some water. I'm gonna just get something situated here. If anyone's watching and has any questions about literally anything you want to pick my brain about, or any comments to kind of get a conversation started, put them in the live chat. But I'm not gonna embarrass myself. If no one says anything in the next 3 minutes, we'll just wrap it up. It's 6:36 on my end right now. At 6:40, if no one has said anything, we'll just wrap it up. But let me grab a drink here. Don't be shy. Let me see. While we're doing this, I'll just talk about what's going on with me. I'm going to be starting another YouTube channel, if you can believe it. Still going to be doing this, but I'm going to be doing a video game history project, where I'm going to go through 1,000 games over 50 years of history, starting from 1971. So I bought this old 15-year-old PC on Facebook Marketplace, so I could do all of this. And I'm trying to get it to work with my monitor, but it's like it's been giving me issues where it's like it'll work, and then if I touch the adapter ever so slightly, it all turns off. So I'm gonna get that on and see if I can. Okay, well that monitor's off. Let's see if it comes on. I really hope it works. But I see we have a question here. Okay, this is good. So Lorenzo Fletcher Productions writes, well, it's not looking good for Paramount. If FCC blocks the merger, which is very likely at this point, we'll never close the chapter on this never-ending saga. Yes, exactly. I don't know, Lorenzo. I don't know if you've been following my channel, but I spent the whole summer talking about this. And it looks possible. I don't know if it's likely, but maybe you've been paying more attention to it than I have. But it seems like there's a chance that... I think I almost did this as a story. Did I do this as a story? I think I did a whole video about this, actually. I've just done so many I can't even remember anymore. But, Trump is not happy with CBS because of the whole 60 Minutes scandal where, they interviewed Kamala Harris and edited some of it, the promo used a part of her answer that, they used part of her answer for the promo and a different part of the answer for the actual segment. So Trump was like, oh, this is fake news. This is propaganda. This is interference, blah, blah, blah. So there was a lawsuit filed. And now that Trump has been reelected, he's on his way to the White House, there's a chance that almost as retribution for what happened at CBS, he's going to direct his FCC to kill this Paramount Skydance deal. Which, if you're David Ellison, you must just be going, what the fuck? It's just so out of your control. After everything you went through, it's now getting thwarted just because of Trump and CBS and some crazy thing. So, Paramount, I'm not sure. And Lorenzo writes here, it's crazy how a 60 Minutes interview could put a dent in the merger. Exactly. It's so... it's like the meme of the dominoes, right? It really, some editorial person decided, let's use a different piece of it or whatever. And I'm pretty agnostic about the whole thing. I think it's really within their right to, show... I don't think they did this to mislead people about Kamala Harris. Maybe it helped her because she gave a lot of, word salady answers. But I don't think that was the reason, right? Because they even said, look, we do this all the time. Right? Because, we can't put everything in. Sometimes a piece might work better for a promo, but then another piece is better for, the actual whole, a package, right? So, So it was some editorial person who decided this, and it's now potentially going to have this huge ripple effect on, again, you know, we only have a couple major film distributors. So this is like a huge deal. Whatever happens with this is a huge, huge deal. I think Paramount has so much potential. It just doesn't have the right management or vision. So it's something has to change. If this merger doesn't happen, something else has to happen. They can't just go business as usual. That's my opinion. That they have to do something different. Otherwise, it's never going to, nothing's ever going to change. It's just going to keep declining. So I guess the question is, how do you stop the bleeding? Let me grab some water here. If anyone else has any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. I'm going to tinker with my laptop here, because again, it's giving me issues and I'm getting really annoyed. I might start yelling. I might start going, "Gah!" Just getting really angry. But anyway, yeah, so I'm going to be doing this gaming project. So, but maybe it's on me for the fact that I bought like these cheap, hold on, let me see if I can get it over here without like busting it. Like I bought this like $10 DisplayPort HDMI adapter. I don't know if you can see it really, right? And it's literally like a piece of shit because like look, it's like all broken or whatever already. I literally bought this like last week. So it's like I'll get the display to work and then it just won't work. I don't know why. So maybe I should wrap the show up if I'm gonna be thinking about this DisplayPort issue. Woe is me, right? All right, well, in any case, why don't we kind of wrap up the show here? So that's it for this week. Thanks so much for watching. I want to give a few quick plugs. This is my only YouTube channel. I also have a sister channel called Peter Squared, where I cover topics related to film, media, entertainment, but in more structured video essay format. The video I have up now is called A Closer Look at Frozen, where, you guessed it, I take a closer look at the Disney film Frozen, taking a look at what went right, what went wrong, and everything in between, using these two cartoon versions of myself, this older and younger version. It's a lot of fun. I worked really hard on it, so if you want to go check that out, I would really appreciate it. You can find that in the description down below. Also want to give a plug to the podcast I do with my fiance Viviana called Now That's What I Call a Franchise, where we pick a film franchise and we go through every single installment. The good, the bad, and the ugly. This past season we did Star Wars, which is so much fun. We just wrapped up like a couple days ago, this past Friday. So you can listen to the entire Star Wars season now. This upcoming season we're going to be doing like Middle Earth, Lord of the Rings, Hobbit kind of stuff. That's going to be starting, I think, like the 24th of January. So don't want to miss that. You can find us wherever you get your podcasts. You can also find us on YouTube if that's your preferred way to podcast. You can also just find us at the link in the description down below. And then finally, I want to give a plug to CinemaNQSo. It's not just a YouTube channel. It started as and still is a Substack newsletter where I publish written film reviews for new movies coming out. I've been doing it for almost 3 years now. I have over like 100 reviews. It's been a lot of fun. So definitely go check that out. Go comment and let me know how you disagree with everything I said. You can find the link to that in the description also down below, or you can just go to your browser, type in cinemanqso.substack.com. Once again, thank you all so much for watching. If you haven't already, please like this live stream. It really, really helps with people finding the channel, with the algorithm and the engagement. So if that has all worked and you've somehow stumbled upon this, congratulations. You know what you should do? You should go subscribe, because again, it would really help. I'm trying to build this community the best I can, and we'd love for you to be a part of it. So stay tuned. Until next week, peace out.